Okay, so like, who doesn't want to be happy, right?
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
isn't that what we all want in life?
Yeah.
But is that really the most important thing? Today, we're going to unpack this question with a twist.
Yeah.
We've got this debate transcript. And get this, one of the debaters is a comedian.
Yeah. And they have a really interesting perspective on this. They actually make some really funny points.
I bet. So to start with their argument against happiness being like the ultimate goal is, get this, breathing.
Yeah, at first it sounds a little silly, but they have a good point, which is that you kind of need to be alive to experience happiness, right? Like if you can't breathe, happiness is probably not your main concern.
Okay, yeah, that's actually like a really good point. So it's like, yes, we all want to be happy, but not if it means sacrificing our basic needs. So are they basically saying that happiness is more about like living a fulfilling life and not just chasing like some fleeting feeling?
Exactly. Yeah, and they have this really funny bit in the debate where they say, imagine if happiness was like the only measure of success, like comedians would be ruling the world, right?
Because making people laugh equals peak happiness. Okay, I see where they're going with this, but like we all know it's more complicated than that.
Right, and that kind of leads into their next point, which is that telling someone to just be happy is kind of like a dismissive platitude, especially when someone's going through something difficult.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not very helpful advice, is it?
No. You want actual advice, not just like empty words.
Right. Exactly.
Like when someone says, oh, you're stressed, just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Right, like that's ever worked.
Exactly. And the comedian in the transcript gives this funny hypothetical. Like, imagine if someone's like, I don't need to go to school or I don't need to go to work because I can just be happy, right? Like, we all know that's not how it works.
Yeah. It'd be total chaos. Okay, so dodging responsibility aside, their last argument against the whole happiness is everything thing is actually pretty deep. They say that by always chasing happiness, we're actually ignoring all the other emotions that make us human.
Yeah, exactly. They argue that, all those emotions that we think of as negative, like sadness and anger and grief, they're actually very valuable. They're tools for growth. They even bring up Shakespeare to make their point.
Shakespeare. Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more.
So they argue that, Shakespeare's tragedies are considered masterpieces because they evoke such a wide range of emotions, right? Like, we connect with the characters' struggles, their pain, their moments of joy and despair. It's that full spectrum of human experience that makes the stories so powerful.
It's like if you never experience sadness, you'd never really know what true happiness feels like.
Right. It's about having that contrast.
Exactly.
And they even suggest that, by always chasing happiness, we might actually make ourselves more fragile in a way.
What do you mean?
It's like if you never let yourself experience negative emotions, you won't really know how to deal with them when they inevitably come up.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like trying to build a house without any foundation,
Yeah, it just all falls apart.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm definitely starting to see their side of things, but I'm curious to hear what the pro-happiness people have to say.
Yeah, so their first main point is that happiness, unlike other things like, winning the lottery or being born with some kind of natural talent, is something that we can actually cultivate through effort.
Okay, so it's not just about luck or circumstance.
Right, it's about mindset and the choices that we make every day.
So like you're not just along for the ride, you're actually in the driver's seat.
Exactly, and they make it clear that they're not saying we need to be constantly blissed out all the time, because that's just not realistic. It's more about cultivating a positive outlook, focusing on what you can control and just kind of savoring those moments of joy when they happen.
So it's about being more present in the moment and appreciating the good stuff even when things are tough.
Exactly. And that actually reminds me of this concept called mindfulness. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, actually, I was just reading about that the other day.
Yeah. So mindfulness is all about being present in the moment without judgment. And there's actually a lot of research that shows that practicing mindfulness can lead to increased feelings of happiness and well-being.
Interesting. So it's not just about thinking happy thoughts all the time. It's about training your mind to be more present and engaged in your life.
That's right.
Even the messy parts.
Exactly. And that actually leads into their next point, which is this idea of finding joy in the journey.
Ooh, I like that.
So they argue that even when things are tough, we can still find these little pockets of happiness in unexpected places if we're open to them.
That's a good point. It's like the stories you hear about people who find like a $20 bill on the ground and it just totally makes their day.
Right, exactly.
It's not that they won the lottery or anything, but it's still like the little boost of happiness.
Exactly. And it's about choosing to focus on those little wins.
Because even when things are hard, there are always things to be grateful for.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of choosing the next point from the pro-happiness side, really stood out to me, delayed gratification.
Ah, yes, the marshmallow test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're telling a kid they can have one marshmallow now or two if they wait.
Exactly. And it's so fascinating because it shows how some kids are just wired for that delayed gratification.
Yeah, my kids would be the ones gobbling down the marshmallow before I even finished explaining the rules.
But that's okay. Everyone's different.
True, true.
Mm.
So how does this marshmallow thing connect back to happiness, though?
Well, the pro-happiness folks would say that a lot of the things that bring us the most happiness in life require some level of delayed gratification.
Like what?
Think about like building a career you love or buying your dream home or even just like nurturing a strong relationship. Those things take time and effort, right?
Yeah, you don't just wake up one day with your dream job and a perfect life.
Exactly. It's about setting those long-term goals and being willing to work towards them, even if it means like delaying that gratification in the short term.
So it's like they're saying that happiness isn't always about instant gratification. It's
Yeah.
about having that bigger picture in mind.
Precisely. And that actually brings us to the final point of this whole debate romance.
Okay, everyone wants to be happy in love, right? So what's the debate here?
So the pro-happiness side, they argue that you should really prioritize your own happiness in a relationship.
Okay.
And they contrast this with people who might prioritize things like security or status over their own emotional well-being.
Like you shouldn't stay in a relationship just because you're afraid of being alone or because it looks good on paper.
Exactly. They even share stories about people who stayed in unhappy relationships for those external reasons, only to realize later that they had sacrificed their own happiness.
Yeah, I've heard those stories too.
And it raises a really interesting question. Is it selfish to prioritize your own happiness in a relationship?
Or is it actually the foundation of a healthy partnership?
Right, because if you're not happy yourself, how can you truly contribute to a happy and fulfilling relationship?
That's a really good point.
It's something for everyone to think about.
Wow. So we went from breathing to comedians to Shakespeare to marshmallows to love.
Yeah. It's quite a journey, right?
It really makes you think about this whole happiness thing in a whole new light.
And isn't that the goal of a good deep dive?
Absolutely. To challenge our assumptions and really dig into these big questions.
And hopefully come out the other side with some new perspectives.
I think we've definitely done that today.
I agree.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but this conversation has given us a lot to think about.
It really has.
Remember, there are no easy answers when it comes to happiness. It's a lifelong journey of exploration and discovery.
And sometimes the most unexpected paths can lead to the most fulfilling destinations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as you go about your day, ask yourself, what does happiness really mean to you? What are you doing to cultivate it in your own life?
It's a question worth pondering.
It sure is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into happiness. We'll see you next time.